I thought love was over, then my gay best friend chose me. Hello everyone and welcome back. Before we begin today's emotional journey, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. Your support helps us continue creating heartfelt, dramatic, and unforgettable stories for you. It only takes a second, it's completely free, and it truly means more than you know. We'd also love to hear from you. Where are you watching from today? Let us know your city or country in the comments below because we enjoy seeing viewers from all around the world. Thank you so much for being here. Now, let's begin today's story and meet our main character, Adrian Cole. The hardest heartbreak isn't losing the person you loved. It's realizing the one who never left was standing beside you all along. A year ago, I would have laughed if someone had told me my life would eventually make sense again. Back then, every morning felt like waking up inside a house that still looked familiar but somehow no longer felt like home. My apartment in Portland was quiet in the kind of way that made every creaking floorboard sound like a memory refusing to leave. The coffee maker still sat on the same corner of the kitchen counter. The old vinyl records were still stacked beside the living room bookshelf. Even the blue ceramic mug with the tiny chip on its handle waited exactly where I had left it. Yet everything had changed because the future I thought I was building had disappeared without warning. When a relationship ends, people tell you that time heals everything. They mean well, but nobody explains that healing doesn't happen in a straight line. Some mornings you feel like yourself again. Other mornings you stare at your reflection while brushing your teeth and wonder when the light behind your own eyes quietly packed its bags and moved out. That was my life. I still went to work every weekday. I still smiled politely during meetings. I still answered texts with cheerful emojis that never matched how I actually felt. I became an expert at pretending everything was okay because pretending required less energy than explaining why it wasn't. The strange thing was that someone always seemed to notice anyway. Every Saturday around 11 in the morning, there would be 3 familiar knocks on my apartment door. Never 2, never 4, always 3. I never needed to ask who it was. Noah Bennett would already be standing there holding a paper bag from the neighborhood bakery in one hand and 2 cups of coffee in the other, wearing that relaxed smile that somehow made gloomy weekends feel less permanent. I brought cinnamon rolls, he would usually say, as if cinnamon rolls alone could solve emotional collapse. Then he would step inside without waiting for an invitation because after nearly 10 years of friendship, formalities had quietly retired. We would spend hours watching old baseball games neither of us really cared about, arguing over terrible action movies, or walking through Forest Park without any destination beyond getting fresh air. Noah never pressured me to talk about my breakup. He simply made enough room for silence that, eventually, words found their own way out. Looking back now, I realize he remembered everything. The kind of coffee I liked. The songs I skipped because they reminded me of painful memories. The grocery store where I refused to shop because I used to go there with someone else. He noticed when I laughed for real instead of forcing it. He noticed when I was lying about being fine. Somehow, he always knew before I did. At the time, I believed that was simply what best friends did. I never stopped to wonder whether kindness that patient could sometimes be something far deeper. I certainly never imagined that while I was mourning the love I had lost, another kind of love had been quietly waiting beside me the entire time, asking for nothing except the chance to stay. Life has a strange sense of humor because the days that feel the most ordinary are often the ones we remember forever. One rainy Saturday, Noah showed up carrying a grocery bag that was much heavier than usual. I opened the door expecting coffee and pastries, but instead he walked in with 2 reusable shopping bags filled with ingredients. "Your refrigerator is officially depressing," he announced with a grin as he headed straight for the kitchen. I found half a bottle of mustard, expired yogurt, and something that might have once been lettuce. I leaned against the doorway and laughed, an actual laugh that surprised both of us. "I was going to go shopping tomorrow," I lied. Noah glanced over his shoulder with an expression that said he had already heard every excuse I was capable of inventing. "Sure you were." Within minutes, my apartment sounded different. Cabinet doors opened and closed. A skillet warmed on the stove. Music drifted softly from his phone, an old folk playlist we had listened to since college. The scent of garlic and butter slowly replaced the stale silence that had settled into my home over the past year. Watching Noah move around my tiny kitchen felt strangely comforting, almost like watching someone quietly put scattered pieces of my life back where they belonged. We talked about everything except my broken relationship. He told me about a customer who accidentally walked into the wrong office building all week before realizing his mistake. I complained about my impossible manager who believed every project deserved an emergency meeting. Noah exaggerated every story with ridiculous voices until I nearly spilled my drink laughing. Somewhere between chopping vegetables and burning the first batch of toast, the heaviness inside my chest loosened just enough for me to breathe without thinking about it. Looking back, I cannot remember every conversation we had that afternoon, but I remember every small kindness. Noah replacing the burned toast without saying a word. Noah quietly washing dishes before I even noticed they had piled up. Noah adjusting the thermostat because he knew I always felt cold when it rained. Those moments seemed so natural that I never questioned them. They simply became part of my weekends, like rain in Oregon or the smell of fresh coffee in the morning. Friends notice things about each other, I told myself. That was all this was. Later that evening we wandered through Powell's books, our favorite place to waste entire afternoons. Noah disappeared between the shelves for a few minutes before returning, with a novel he insisted I would love. I rolled my eyes because he had made the exact same claim dozens of times before, yet somehow every recommendation became one of my favorite books. As we reached the register, I realized he had quietly added the novel to his own purchase without mentioning it. "You do not have to buy that for me," I protested. He shrugged as though it were the smallest decision in the world. "Maybe not," he replied, smiling with that familiar calm warmth. "But I wanted to." I thanked him, thinking nothing more of it. I never asked why he always remembered the little things that made me smile while forgetting nearly everything he ever wanted for himself. I never noticed that every happy memory I had collected during the hardest year of my life somehow included Noah standing somewhere nearby, never asking to be the center of my world, only making sure that mine did not fall apart. People like to believe that the past stays where you leave it, but memories have a habit of learning your address. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the kind that usually disappeared from memory before dinner. Rain tapped gently against the office windows while everyone hurried to finish their work before the weekly team meeting. I had just refilled my coffee when my phone buzzed across my desk. The message came from a number I had not seen in over a year. First, I thought it was spam. Then I read the name, Ryan. My fingers froze around the paper cup as though the room had suddenly lost all its warmth. There were only 6 words. "Can we talk? I miss you." Nothing dramatic. Nothing complicated. Yet somehow those 6 words reached into a place inside me that I had spent an entire year trying to lock away. For several minutes, I simply stared at the screen while the coffee slowly cooled in my hand. Memories arrived without permission. Weekend road trips along the Oregon coast. Quiet Sunday mornings. Promises that had once sounded permanent. It was amazing how the heart could forget the reasons something ended while remembering every beautiful moment that came before it. I did not answer the message. Not immediately. Instead, I slipped the phone back into my pocket and tried to convince myself it meant nothing. But all afternoon, I found myself checking the screen every few minutes, almost expecting another message to appear. That evening, Noah came over as usual. He carried takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant and complained about the impossible parking situation outside my building. Everything felt familiar until my phone lit up on the kitchen counter. Noah glanced toward it without meaning to. I noticed his eyes pause for barely a second before he quietly looked away. He did not ask who had texted me. He did not invade my privacy. Instead, he carefully unpacked the food and asked whether I wanted extra hot sauce like always. I should have appreciated that kindness. Instead, I surprised even myself by saying, "Ryan reached out today." The words hung in the air longer than I expected. Noah's hands stopped moving for the briefest moment before he nodded once. "How are you feeling about that?" he asked gently. Not what did he want. Not why now. Just how are you feeling? That was who Noah had always been. He never rushed to give answers before understanding the question. I rubbed the back of my neck and let out a nervous laugh. Honestly, I do not know. Noah smiled, but something about it looked different. It was softer, almost tired. Then you do not have to decide tonight, he said quietly. Some answers become clearer if you give them a little room to breathe. We spent the rest of dinner talking about movies and work, pretending nothing had changed, but I could feel it anyway. There was a silence sitting between us that had never existed before. It was not uncomfortable. It was simply unfamiliar, like hearing your favorite song played in a different key. When Noah left later that night, he paused at the apartment door longer than usual. "Get some sleep, Adrian," he said with the same warm voice I had heard hundreds of times before. "Whatever you decide, I hope it brings you peace." I smiled and thanked him, believing everything would return to normal by the weekend. I did not realize that while I was standing at the edge of reopening an old chapter, Noah had already begun quietly preparing himself to step out of mine. The first sign that someone is leaving your life is almost never a goodbye. It is the absence of the little things you never thought to appreciate. Saturday arrived, and for the first time in nearly a year, there were no 3 familiar knocks at my apartment door. I glanced at the clock a dozen times before finally convincing myself Noah had probably slept in. Around noon, my phone buzzed. I smiled automatically, expecting a message asking whether I wanted coffee or cinnamon rolls. Instead, I read, "Sorry, Adrian. I cannot make it today. Work has been unexpectedly busy. Rain check." I stared at the message longer than necessary before typing back, "Of course. No worries. Good luck." It was a perfectly normal conversation between 2 friends. So why did my apartment suddenly feel larger than it had the night before? The silence returned with surprising speed. Without Noah humming while he cooked in my kitchen or laughing at his own terrible jokes, every room echoed just a little differently. I tried distracting myself by finally agreeing to meet Ryan for coffee the following afternoon. We chose a small cafe overlooking the river, the same neighborhood where we had spent countless weekends years earlier. Ryan looked almost exactly the same, only a little older around the eyes. We exchanged polite smiles, awkward hugs, and cautious conversation that slowly became more comfortable. He apologized sincerely for the way things had ended. He admitted he had been immature, afraid of commitment, and too proud to admit when he was wrong. Listening to him, I realized something surprising. The anger I had carried for so long had quietly disappeared. In its place was something calmer, almost peaceful. Forgiveness, perhaps. Yet forgiveness felt very different from wanting to begin again. As Ryan spoke about second chances, I found my attention drifting toward the window. Outside, a man laughed as his friend handed him an umbrella during a sudden burst of rain. Such a tiny gesture should not have mattered, but it reminded me of Noah, who always carried an extra umbrella because he knew I never remembered mine. Ryan was still talking when I caught myself, wondering whether Noah had eaten lunch yet. The thought arrived so naturally that it startled me. After we said goodbye, Ryan smiled hopefully. "Think about what I said," he told me. "Maybe we could have dinner next week." I promised I would think about it because that seemed kinder than giving an answer I did not yet understand. As I walked back toward my apartment, I reached for my phone almost automatically. My thumb hovered over Noah's contact before I finally called him. It rang several times before going to voicemail. That had never happened before. A few minutes later, he texted instead. "Sorry, I am still at work. Long day. Talk later." There was nothing unusual about the message, yet something inside me tightened. Over the next 2 weeks, our routines quietly unraveled. Noah canceled another Saturday because of work, then another because he was helping a coworker move. Our conversations became shorter, our text messages less frequent. He was never cold, never rude, just farther away, like watching a lighthouse from a boat drifting steadily out to sea. I kept telling myself that life simply became busy sometimes. But every evening my apartment grew a little quieter. Every weekend stretched a little longer. And for reasons I could not explain, I found myself missing the person I had always believed would simply be there forever. It is amazing how quickly you notice an empty chair once the person who always filled it stops showing up. 3 weeks passed before I finally admitted to myself that I missed Noah more than I missed the routine we used to share. At first I blamed work. Then I blamed timing. Then I blamed myself for becoming too dependent on someone who had every right to live his own life. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. One Thursday evening I stopped by the neighborhood bookstore after work, hoping a new novel might quiet the restless feeling that had followed me all week. As I wandered between the shelves, I found myself standing in front of the same display where Noah had secretly bought me that novel months earlier. I reached for another book, only to discover a folded receipt tucked between the pages. It was not mine, but seeing that little slip of paper brought back the memory with surprising clarity. Noah had smiled so casually that day, pretending the gift was no big deal. At the time I had accepted it without another thought. Now I wondered how many small acts of kindness I had mistaken for ordinary friendship simply because they had become so consistent. That night, unable to sleep, I opened an old storage box in my bedroom closet while searching for a photo album. Instead, I found years of forgotten memories. Ticket stubs from baseball games. A faded postcard from our road trip to the Oregon coast. Birthday cards. Printed photographs from college. There was Noah standing beside me in nearly every chapter of my adult life. At my first apartment. At my college graduation. Helping me paint my living room after I moved. Sitting beside me in the emergency waiting room the night I caught a severe case of pneumonia. Somehow convincing exhausted nurses to let him stay just a little longer because, as he insisted, I hated hospitals. I had forgotten that he was the one who brought me clean clothes the next morning. He was the one who made sure my refrigerator was full before I came home. He was the one who quietly picked up my prescriptions because I was too weak to drive. I closed my eyes and another memory surfaced without warning. The day after my breakup, I had barely managed to get out of bed. I remembered hearing those 3 familiar knocks before Noah walked in carrying soup, coffee, and absolutely no advice. He never once said, "I told you so." He never criticized Ryan. He simply sat beside me on the couch for hours, talking about everything except the reason my heart was broken until, somehow, breathing no longer felt impossible. My phone buzzed, pulling me back to the present. It was Ryan asking whether I had decided about dinner the following week. I stared at the message for nearly a minute before setting the phone face down on the table. Instead of thinking about Ryan, I found myself wondering when Noah had started carrying so much of my sadness without ever asking for credit. I realized something that unsettled me more than any memory ever could. Every time my life had fallen apart, I instinctively searched for Noah before anyone else. Not because I expected him to fix everything, but because somehow the world always felt a little less frightening whenever he was nearby. For the first time, I asked myself a question that should have occurred to me years ago. If Noah had always been the first person my heart looked for whenever I was hurting, then why had I never wondered where my heart wanted to be when it was finally ready to heal? Some truths do not arrive with thunder. They arrive folded inside ordinary moments that you almost threw away. The following Saturday, I finally decided that waiting for another text from Noah was no longer enough. I picked up my car keys and drove across town to the architecture firm where he worked, thinking I would surprise him with coffee the way he had surprised me so many times. The receptionist smiled politely before telling me he had already left for the day. "He has been working late almost every night," she added. "Actually, today he took a personal day. He said he was cleaning out some old things before a possible move." Possible move. Those 3 words settled heavily in my chest. Noah had never mentioned moving anywhere. On the drive home, rain blurred the windshield until the city lights became soft streaks of gold. I kept replaying every conversation from the past month, searching for clues I had somehow ignored. Had he tried to tell me? Had I been too distracted by my own confusion to notice? When I reached my apartment, I found a small package leaning against my front door. There was no shipping label, only my name written in Noah's unmistakable handwriting. Inside was the novel he had bought me months earlier, its pages now filled with colorful sticky notes marking his favorite passages. Tucked inside the front cover was a simple envelope. My hands hesitated before opening it. The letter was dated almost 8 months earlier. "Adrian," it began, I am writing this because sometimes feelings become too heavy to carry in silence, even if nobody else ever reads them. I do not expect anything from you. I never have. Loving someone does not give me the right to ask for their future. I only hope that one day, whether it is with me or someone else, you find the kind of peace you have spent so long searching for. I stopped reading and closed my eyes. My heartbeat echoed louder than the rain outside. After a long moment, I continued. There are days when I almost tell you the truth. Then you smile because you are talking about someone else, and I remember that friendship is already a gift. I would rather spend a lifetime standing beside you than risk losing the chance to stand beside you at all. If someday you find happiness with another person, I will still cheer louder than anyone else. You deserve that. You always will. The final lines were written more lightly, as though his hand had paused before finishing. If you are reading this, it probably means I finally found the courage to let go instead of holding on to a dream that only existed inside my own heart. Please never feel guilty. You gave me more beautiful memories than you will ever know. My vision blurred before I even realized tears had begun slipping down my face. This was never a confession meant to change my mind. It was a farewell written by someone who loved quietly enough to choose my happiness over his own. I looked around my apartment and suddenly every forgotten detail rearranged itself into a picture I had somehow never seen. The extra umbrella, the warm meals, the patient silence, the birthday surprises, the hospital visits, the countless Saturdays. None of it had ever asked for recognition because real love, perhaps the deepest kind, sometimes speaks so softly that you only hear it after the room has gone completely quiet. The most difficult choice is not between two people. It is between the person you used to be and the person you are finally becoming. I barely slept that night. Noah's letter rested on my kitchen table, its edges curling slightly beneath the soft glow of the lamp, and every time I walked past it, I felt as though it were quietly asking a question that only I could answer. By morning, I knew there was one conversation I could no longer postpone. I called Ryan and asked if we could meet one last time. He suggested the same cafe by the river, but this time the clouds had cleared, leaving bright autumn sunlight dancing across the water. He greeted me with an optimistic smile that faded the moment he saw my expression. Before he could speak, I took a slow breath. I owe you honesty, I said. Ryan nodded without interrupting. When you came back into my life, I thought maybe I had been given another chance to fix what we lost. I wanted to believe that because it sounded familiar, and familiar feels safe after your heart has been broken. I looked down at the untouched cup of coffee between my hands before continuing. But somewhere along the way, I realized I was not missing our future. I was missing the version of myself who believed everything could still work out. Ryan remained silent for a long moment before offering a small, understanding smile. There is someone else, he said quietly. It was not really a question. I opened my mouth to answer, but the truth surprised even me. I do not think I noticed until recently, I admitted. He was never someone new. He has always been there. Ryan leaned back in his chair and laughed softly, not with bitterness but with quiet acceptance. Then you already know what you have to do. We spent another 20 minutes talking, not as former partners trying to rewrite history, but as two people finally making peace with it. When we stood to leave, he pulled me into a brief hug. Do not waste any more time, he said. The people who stay beside us that long are rare. As I walked toward my car, his words echoed inside me with surprising clarity. The drive home felt different from every drive I had taken over the past year. For the first time, I was not looking backward. I was remembering dozens of moments that suddenly carried new meaning. Noah laughing while pretending burnt toast was gourmet cuisine. Noah waiting with me through endless hospital hours. Noah driving across town in a snowstorm because my furnace had stopped working. Noah celebrating every promotion I earned as though it were his own achievement. I had spent so long searching for grand declarations that I completely overlooked the quiet devotion already surrounding my life. Love had never arrived with fireworks or impossible promises. It had arrived carrying groceries, remembering my favorite coffee order, and knocking exactly 3 times every Saturday morning. I reached for my phone before I even started the engine. My hands trembled slightly as I opened Noah's contact. The call rang once, then twice before reaching voicemail again. I did not leave a message. Instead, I stared through the windshield at the bright blue sky stretching above Portland and made a promise to myself. If Noah truly intended to walk away because he believed that was the only path toward my happiness, then this time I would be the one who crossed the distance between us. For once, I would stop waiting for him to find me. I was finally ready to choose the person who had quietly chosen me every single day. Hope rarely announces itself with certainty. Most of the time, it arrives disguised as one person refusing to give up before the story is truly over. Noah finally answered my call late that evening. His voice sounded calm, almost exactly the same as always, yet there was a careful distance beneath every word. "Hey Adrian," he said warmly. "Sorry I missed your calls. It has been a busy couple of days." I closed my eyes for a moment, gathering the courage I should have found years ago. "Can we meet?" There was a brief silence before he answered. "Sure. Tomorrow morning." We agreed to meet at our favorite overlook in Washington Park, the place where we had watched countless sunsets over the city ever since college. I arrived almost 20 minutes early. The autumn air carried the crisp scent of pine and damp earth, and golden leaves drifted lazily across the walking path whenever the wind decided to remind everyone that another season was beginning. Noah appeared exactly on time, hands tucked into the pockets of his navy jacket, offering the same gentle smile that had always made difficult days seem a little less impossible. For a few minutes we talked about ordinary things. Work, the changing weather, a new bakery that had opened downtown. It almost felt like every other Saturday until Noah quietly broke the silence. "I was going to tell you about the move," he admitted. "A firm in Seattle offered me a position, better projects, better opportunity." My heart sank. "When?" I asked. "In about 3 weeks, if everything goes as planned." He looked toward the skyline instead of at me. I thought some distance might be healthy. I understood exactly what he meant. Healthy for him. Healthy because staying close to someone you love while believing they will never love you back can slowly wear down even the strongest heart. I reached into my jacket pocket and carefully unfolded the letter he had left for me. Noah's expression changed the moment he recognized the paper. "You found it," he whispered. I nodded. "You never meant for me to read this, did you?" He smiled faintly. "Not unless life decided differently." We stood there surrounded by quiet, the city stretching peacefully below us while neither of us rushed to fill the silence. Finally Noah spoke again. "Adrian, you do not owe me anything. If reading that letter made you feel guilty, please forget it. I never wanted my feelings to become your responsibility." That single sentence shattered the last illusion I had been holding on to. Even now, he was trying to protect me instead of himself. I took one slow step closer until we were standing only a few feet apart. "You still think this is about guilt?" I said softly. "It is not." Noah looked at me with cautious confusion. I felt my heartbeat echo in my ears, but for the first time I did not run from it. "I spent an entire year believing I had lost the greatest love of my life," I continued. "Then I realized something. Every memory that helped me survive that year had you in it. Every time I needed someone, I reached for you without even thinking. Every version of my happiest self somehow included you standing beside me." Noah lowered his eyes, as though he was afraid to hope too soon. I gently shook my head. "I am not here because I feel sorry for you. I am here because I finally understand what my heart has been trying to tell me all along." I smiled through tears that no longer came from heartbreak but from clarity. "Noah, if you are still willing, I do not want you to leave believing you were never chosen, because this time I am choosing you." Noah did not answer right away. He simply looked at me as though he was trying to decide whether he was standing inside reality or another dream that would disappear the moment he reached for it. The wind carried a few golden leaves across the overlook, and somewhere below us the city continued moving as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Finally, he let out a quiet laugh that trembled with disbelief. "You have no idea how many times I imagined hearing those words," he admitted softly. I just stopped believing they ever would become real. I smiled through the tears still clinging to my eyes. Neither did I. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. There was no need to fill the silence because, for the first time, it no longer carried uncertainty. It carried peace. Noah reached for my hand carefully, giving me every chance to step away if I wanted to. Instead, I closed the distance myself, wrapping my fingers around his. The gesture was simple, almost ordinary, but somehow it felt more meaningful than every grand romantic fantasy I had ever imagined. It was not the beginning of a perfect love story. It was the continuation of one that had quietly been growing for years. Noah declined the offer in Seattle a week later. When I asked if he was certain, he smiled with the same calm confidence that had carried me through my darkest days. "I am not staying because you asked me to," he said. "I am staying because this finally feels like the future I stopped hoping for." Life did not suddenly become magical. We still argued about whose turn it was to wash dishes. We still disagreed about which baseball team deserved our loyalty. Noah still insisted that my cooking required professional supervision, and I still claimed he dramatically overwatered every plant he owned. Yet even those ordinary moments felt different because neither of us had to hide behind friendship anymore. About a year later, we signed the lease on a small neighborhood bookstore with a cozy coffee corner tucked beside the front windows. It had been a distant dream we used to joke about during college, a place where people could slow down, read a good story, and feel a little less alone before returning to the noise of everyday life. On the wall near the entrance hung dozens of framed photographs. Friends often assumed the largest picture would be from the day we officially became a couple, but it was not. Instead, it showed two young men sitting on an old apartment floor surrounded by takeout containers, laughing over burned toast and terrible action movies. Someone once asked why that photograph mattered so much. Noah smiled before I could answer. Because that was the day love quietly chose patience instead of recognition. I looked at the picture for a long moment before adding my own answer. And it was the day I started learning that the greatest acts of love are rarely loud. They are the people who remember your favorite coffee order, who stay when life becomes inconvenient, who celebrate your victories without asking for applause, and who quietly believe in your future even when you have stopped believing in it yourself. Looking back now, I understand that my heart was never broken beyond repair. It was simply looking in the wrong direction for far too long. Sometimes the love that changes your life is not the one that arrives unexpectedly. Sometimes it is the one that patiently knocks on your door every Saturday morning, carrying warm coffee, fresh cinnamon rolls, and enough quiet kindness to remind you that home has never been a place. Home has always been a person.